Welcome to the Living to Thrive with Cancer podcast, a podcast about the big and little issues that come with living with cancer. I'm Catherine White, a stage 4 colon cancer thriver, passionate about supporting others who have faced a cancer diagnosis and are looking to feel empowered in taking back control of their health and happiness. My own walk with cancer helped me to learn more about myself and how to live with cancer, and it led me to become a holistic cancer coach so I can support others to move from survivor to thriver. So let's get started. Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 4.12 of the Living to Thrive with Cancer podcast. I am Catherine White, a certified holistic cancer coach, a published author, and the host of the Living to Thrive with Cancer podcast. Before we dive into the episode, if you are a new listener, I want to welcome you to the podcast. As a cancer thriver, I use my stories and experience with stage 4 colon cancer to guide you through your walk with cancer. As a holistic cancer coach, I want to help you to create a health-building lifestyle, manage your stress, and help you to navigate the day in and day out stuff that comes up when you have cancer. If you find what you've learned here today to be helpful, please share it with other people you know that could benefit from this episode. Sharing helps me to support more people living with cancer and to help them move from survivor to thriver. And you can go ahead and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, follow it on YouTube, and I would love for you to head to the show notes and get your name on my Thriver community email list. You can follow my path to thriving there and see how I'm using what I've learned to support you in your walk with cancer. And when you sign up, I will send you a free little gift that you can download and use in your life. In today's episode, I am talking with Jennifer Bartley. Jennifer graduated from the Advanced Massage Therapy program at Fascia College in London, Ontario in 2023. She received a diploma in health and fitness promotions in 2021 from Fascia College and certification for 200 hours of yoga teacher training in 2021. For many years, she worked as a chiropractic health assistant and loved being a part of a wellness team. She was inspired to return to school and become a registered massage therapist because she wanted to have a larger role in helping people find their best state of wellness. In 2022, she was offered a position at the St. Thomas Elgin General Hospital as a wellness coach. Her role is to provide stretching breaks, yoga, and mindfulness sessions throughout the hospital to all staff members. Jennifer has found this role to be immensely rewarding. In her time, Jennifer is a passionate hockey mom with 2 of her 5 daughters playing competitive hockey in local leagues. In her spare time, she enjoys running, hiking, yoga, and paddleboarding. Jennifer says, "I love being very active as I believe it is an essential part of reducing stress and achieving overall wellness." So hello, Jennifer, and welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
I'm so happy to have you here today. And full disclosure to everyone that's listening, Jennifer is a very dear friend of mine. I was one of her teachers in her yoga teacher training. We have worked together in the past, and she is my massage therapist. And that's sort of what inspired me to bring Jennifer onto the podcast, because she knows what a cancer body looks like, and she knows the benefits of massage. And so that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yay. I'm very excited actually to be here to talk with you today about massage therapy and to share with you what I know.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into it. So can you start by telling the listeners a little bit about your own health story and what led you to get into the health and wellness community? I know we talked about your certifications, but maybe a little bit of insight into who you actually are.
Sure. So in 2017, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune disease, which led me actually to find a flyer that you had posted. And we came together and we talked about how the aspect of nutrition, stress levels were probably affecting my gut. So that kind of led me into a deep dive of all things gut related. And then all things stress related too as well. And that then led me to the path of how can I make some change in how I'm eating day to day, how I'm viewing food, how I am preparing food for my family. And then what am I doing aside from I was already an avid runner. I loved going to the gym. So I already had the fitness stuff kind of in the background. However, I needed a bit more of of calming sort of things, right? Like just I was doing everything kind of high cardio, kind of like high impact type of fitness, right? So I needed something that was more slow, uh, uh, to kind of slow my nervous system down a little bit, which was like a really interesting concept to me because I actually have an ADHD brain. So my brain just wants to go, right? So the thought of like, oh, wait, like if I slow down and be a little bit more mindful, then what is that going to do to my health overall? How is that going to impact me sending this disease into remission? So that led to the restorative yoga that I ended up signing up for with you as well. And then you're like, hey, how about you become a yoga teacher? So I was like, okay, which was what led me to do yoga teacher training. And I just kept going from there. So yeah, like I feel in my heart that everything happens for a reason. So I think, that was the catalyst that got me going. It got me going to school, it got me learning more about my body, about, how I relate to the world even. It was, yeah, it's just been a journey, really.
Amazing. I feel so grateful to be part of it and to have watched you go through the whole process from that initial meeting in a coffee shop in town to
Yeah,
being here today. Like, I love what you said about like starting to be more aware of your body and
yeah,
to recognize that stress was such a huge part of it because we talk on the podcast and we talk in my coaching, um, that stress really is such a catalyst for
yeah.
dis-ease in the body.
And I really think I didn't realize that I was in that constant state of the fight or flight or running from the lion. Because to me, I didn't feel stress, right? Like when we talk about stress, I think I had that such a disconnect, if you will, from like what stress actually looks like in the body and then how it comes out, right? So I feel like there's this disconnect and I see it. It's mostly at the hospital, actually. When I'm
Mm.
working at the hospital, I see that disconnect from like, oh, I'm running from the lion, right? But there's no actual lion. So I learned like a lot about that fight or flight, a lot about of the cortisol levels in my body, and then how to maintain that and like what do you do with it, right? When you find that you're in such a state of stress, how do you calm yourself down, right? So yoga taught me a lot about mindfulness, about the need to slow down, to go to that calm place, right? To the quiet, right? Where often I would avoid those spaces, right?
Mm.
I would avoid it because it felt so uncomfortable in my body and I couldn't figure out why, right? I couldn't figure it out. So it was a learning process. And I think that teacher training, the rabbit holes I went down just alone with that was crazy. But it all led to massage therapy, which is amazing as well. And they're all interconnected. Fitness, massage, and yoga and mindfulness, very, very connected.
Yeah, like, oh gosh, there's so much in there. But let's just like continue with that last thought, like the yoga and the massage and the stress, all of these things, they're all interconnected. Can you just
Yeah.
elaborate on how
And
they're
I would
connected?
say to you, the majority of what I treat in a day are stress related issues felt in the body. So people like when people think of massage therapy, I sometimes they think, oh, low back pain, right? Because that's what people
Mhm.
talk about. Oh, my low back's hurting. I treat low back, but I actually treat more stress related, like the upper back, the shoulders, the neck, that tension that we feel that we hold in the body. That's what I treat day to day, right? Because pain is interesting, right? Like you're feeling pain in your body, but what is the root of that pain, right? What's causing that pain, right? And often there's this disconnect of like, oh, right, I'm super stressed today. That's why I'm feeling it in my upper, like a lot of it's mechanical too, like posture and all that stuff too. But we hold these things in ourselves, right? Like I'm sure I know that you know this, right? Because you've
Mhm.
learned a lot about that through your cancer journey, all the things that have contributed to your health and wellness, right?
Yeah.
What went wrong, what's going right? So I think it's an interesting concept that people have this disconnect where they don't understand that stress could be causing your pain. It is an actual little nugget of overall health, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the
Yeah.
tension we hold and feel in our body, and
Yeah.
how then that contributes to like how we're able to move our body through space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to say in a yoga class, excuse me, is drop your tongue from the top of your mouth and
Right?
then feel the jaw relax at the same time.
Mm.
And people
Yeah.
don't realize.
No, not at all. There's like, again, there's this disconnect to how we're holding life in our body. It's an
Yes.
statement, but it's true. Like, how are we holding our life? How are we feeling it in our physical body from day to day? Right. And I think there is that disconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it
I'm
leads to,
currently, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, it just leads to, the disease factor, right? Goes up.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
I'm currently recording videos for a membership that I host, and that's one of the slides is literally about disconnect and connect. And every message for every lesson is about like we have become so disconnected from ourselves in recognizing, that gut pain is actually related to the food that we're eating, and that gut pain isn't normal, and that tension in our neck and shoulders isn't normal. But we, I think, are socialized to believe in this busy world of do that, well, that's just normal. That's just how everybody feels. And so why am I any different? But when
Yeah.
we connect back into ourselves and we observe, when we learn how to observe and say, oh, my tongue is literally glued to the top of my mouth all of the time, and therefore my jaw hurts and.
Yeah. And I think too, I think it's funny sometimes as I'm massaging, I will hear the grumbles of tummies or they'll fall asleep, right? They apologize to me for those things. And I'm like, no, that's great. Your tummy's growling. That's rest and digest, right?
Yes.
You've fallen asleep, right? Good. That means I'm relaxing your nervous system, right? So that I'm enacting all these good things in your body, right? I'm reducing your stress level, right? That's one of the benefits of having massage therapy, right? And I
Yeah.
think often that piece is maybe a little overlooked of what, you know, massage therapists can do for your overall,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of people think it's about elbows in your back and stripping your hamstrings
Yeah.
and, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
admittedly have fallen asleep on your table. It's- and
But
which
I
is a good
encourage
thing.
that. Yeah, I encourage that. I encourage quiet treatment. I encourage that because I want you to relax into my table. I want you to feel, you know, safe, right? So when you fall asleep, I know that you're feeling safe with me, right? Because sleep, you're in a vulnerable, unconscious state. You're right, and I just kind of smile when I hear the little snores and stuff. I just kind of brings a little smile to my face, and I know that you're relaxing into my treatment and what I'm providing you, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I-
So if we can bring this around to the conversation for around cancer, you're talking about reducing stress, which is like one of my favorite things to talk about with clients, and that leads into the mindfulness of being aware of all those things, those little whispers in your body. So when my clients, first of all, I think there's not enough advocacy for this type of treatment post, even during cancer treatment. But post surgery, like I wish someone had told me that, I've had 6 surgeries, and only on my last one did they say, at this point in your healing process, can you go for massage? It's not been part of the conversation, which is part of why I want to have you here today, is to advocate for these hands-on healing, holistic treatments for people who are stressed from a diagnosis, for people whose bodies have been changed through surgeries and through treatments. And so can you, speak to that at all?
Yeah, I can. I think people need to know, right, that are going through cancer, or even the caregivers need to know this is changing you from the inside out, right? When we look
Mhm.
at the treatments that are provided, whether it be chemo or radiation, you're changing the tissue, you're changing the cells, right? So that has a lasting effect, and sometimes you don't even feel those effects until years later, right? So
Mhm.
you might not feel it immediately, you might not feel what's happening in your body right away, but a little further down the road, you might have that kind of change that's happened in your body. That's when it's going to show up, right? So the tissue's changed, can become a little bit more restricted, especially when we look at scar tissue, right? So scar tissue, there's like a whole healing process, right? We have our tissue, which is collagen fiber, right? And it lays down in like a basket weave. As soon as we disrupt that basket weave with like something like a surgery, whether that be like we've removed breast tissue, or just like what you've faced with some of your treatment with surgery, it leaves that collagen fiber specifically to like lie down differently, right? And then we see that buildup of tissue. We get the restrictions. Like for you, it was like, oh, I can't move my arm, right? I can't
Mhm.
like lift. I don't have this free range of motion of just bringing my arm up by my head, right? And we've kind of brainstormed all sorts of things that it
Yeah.
could be, but you have found that kind of releasing some of that scar tissue or that fascia around that area has been helpful for you, right? So
Very much.
when tissue lays down different, right, it's changing the pattern and how it's lying down, and then it's building that tissue up a little too, right? So sometimes you can get those thick scars, right? Like
Mhm.
raised. So massage therapy goes into that area. We go in there, we kind of disrupt it and try and smooth it out a little bit. We're bringing blood circulation to it, which is blood is amazing to heal
Mhm.
anything in your body, really, right? It's bringing nutrients, all the good stuff, right? So we work to kind of break that pattern up and change it just a little so that it lays different again, so that it's less noticeable or less raised up. Um, and then when we talk about fascial restriction, if let's say you have a scar that's like on your upper shoulder, right? And that little scar is healing, but it's bringing the tissue in close around it, right? It's closed up, it's healing, you've got your scar tissue lying around it. It's also pulling the fascia that lies
Mhm.
around that area, right? And then you're going to feel that kind of restriction in another area. So even if you're feeling, some sort of tension somewhere else in the body, it's probably coming from the scar tissue that's been laid down, right? And often they don't, for any surgery, not just for cancer, they don't tell you to go get this scar tissue worked on, right?
Mhm.
There has to
Mhm.
be a healing process. Like there's a whole healing process that happens with scar tissue. So there is like a waiting period before we can get in and do it. But we should be in there as soon as possible, right? To break up that before it even really starts. So it's more of a preventative measure, right? Going in, breaking it up before we get to that phase of like, I can't lift my shoulder.
Right.
I
Yeah.
need to the scar tissue so that I can move my body, more freely.
Yeah. I find that really interesting, because in my book, I have a chapter on scars, and I
Yeah,
talk about how we just see them as surface.
yeah.
And
They're
all
deep.
of they're very deep, but until I took some anatomy and yoga teacher training and then going deeper into massage treatment, most of my surgeries, for the exception of one, have been on my right hand side. The
Mm,
colon surgery disrupted the space inside there and created,
yeah,
now I know, like scarring inside underneath that I can't see, and then the liver coming out and it's not holding up my ribs anymore. And so the whole side of my body leans in, and then the right lung surgery. Like there's just been so much on the right hand side
right.
that I wish that I had known, and I can see the scars on the surface, but didn't really realize until we started talking about it, the
Yeah.
impact that that has actually on the left side of my body.
Yeah. Right. Well, fascia specifically has something called tensegrity, right? So if it's compressed on one side, then it's stretched on the other, right? So with fascia, we try to work with bringing the tensegrity back to more of a balanced, right? So, and I think people, again, we go back to this concept of like, it has to be deep, it has to be hard, it has to be painful, right? For me to make change, when all of this stuff is actually starts at the surface and then we go deeper, right? So,
Yeah.
it's been sometimes challenging to get people to kind of switch to this very new, like this is new actually, information about fascia and how it's relating to the muscles in your body and what it's doing, this tensegrity that I just talked about, and then the restrictions, the tightness,
Yeah.
the range of motion, like it's
Can you back
all.
up for like just a second and really explain what fascia is? Because I bet you there's a lot of people who have no idea. You and I are like, of course we're talking about fascia, but you're right.
Yeah,
It's such a new thing that
yeah.
people are like, I don't even know what that is. Like, so what is fascia? Where does it, how does it show up in your body? Well, like, where is it in your
Well,
body?
it's everywhere. So fascia is a membranous continuum. Like it's just a membrane that's everywhere. So think your organs, your brain, your blood cells, your just everything, your lymphatics, it's everywhere, right? And so it's composed of like sacs, bags, tubes, containers, right? So
Mm,
it's wrapping your organs, it's wrapping your muscles, it's wrapping your muscle fibers. Like literally, it's everywhere, right? And we have learned that it's it's right on the surface. So you've got your skin and then you've got your fascial layers. So if you think about like a chicken, for instance, that has you've removed the skin and there's this white film on a chicken,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it's fascia. So
Okay.
our fascia. So it's thin. It's like a thin membrane, right? But it's really it's full of collagen, which I just told you is like a weave pattern, right? And it's just it moves, it slides, it glides, but it gets stuck.
Yeah.
So I like to unstuck or unstick the fascia.
Yeah.
I like it. It provides. So people often ask me what I feel, right? When I feel with my hands, like how do I know that it hurts there, right? Like I'll often say I'll stop, right, and be like, oh, does that is that tender there, right? I've done it with you. Is that tender
Mm-hmm.
there? And you'll be
Mm-hmm.
like, right.
Actually, it
It's the
is.
it's the texture, the density, right? The viscosity of the tissue that I'm feeling, right? And they all have different textures to what is going on, whether it be like a dense kind of space where I'm like, oh, I gotta like stay here for a bit, or if it's like dry, the blood's not there, the
Mm,
viscosity is not there. I need to get this fluid so that we have this slide and glide thing happening. So essentially, without getting too into the physiology, it's a membrane and it surrounds everything, everything.
amazing. We are
And
so
it's
not taught that.
no, and for the longest time in anatomy, it meant nothing. Right? It was garbage,
Yeah.
right? Peeled it
Yeah.
off and "Whoop, what's this?" But
Yeah.
they've come to find out, I've got my notes here, it's 250 million sensory receptors just in fascia alone.
Oh,
That's
so
just in it,
that, yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
when we talk about pressure and going deep, right? Fascia actually likes it. So it takes time, right? Like I got to leave my hand on you and my hand sinks down, right? Till we get to the fascia and then I'm feeling some stuff, right? And then I'm feeling
Mm,
which way does this want to move, slide, glide, right? So people, when they think, oh, it's got to be deep, I'm often having to say, but I haven't gotten there yet,
mm,
right? Because I have to take my time. It likes it slow. It likes warmth, right? And it's full of nerves,
mm.
right? But it has to be a slow, more delicate, almost. I hate to say delicate because I'm not sure that's the right word, but slower, not as aggressive right away.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean, by the way, that doesn't mean that if you're treating fascial restriction or if you're treating the fascia that you're not going deep. The difference is that you have to wait for the tissues to let you in.
Mm,
That takes time. It's not like, okay, I'm in. Right? I'm
right.
going to just hammer down with an elbow, right? Because then we're also, I've come to learn in another thing that I've gone down another rabbit hole called neuro modulation. We ignore the skin too, which also has, that's your sensory organ, right? It's like the outside of your brain, right? That's the biggest organ in your body. So if I just come in and I start hammering away, right, with my elbow, I've ignored the skin and then I ignore the fascia. So I've just
Right.
ignored two very important, sensory organs,
Mm.
essentially, right? I think too, we often forget, because if you look at it as a concept of, it's like a wrapping everything. So if it's wrapping your muscle, wrapping your organs, wrapping all these things, when it gets tight and restricted, what is it doing? Right? So I often tell people, like, think about a loaf of bread, right? I've got such crazy analogies. Think about a loaf of bread, right?
It
And you've
works.
wrapped it tight in saran wrap. What's happening to the bread if I wrap it too tight? It's
It's
getting squished,
compressed.
it's
Yeah.
compressed, right? So it's in the compression that we're feeling that uncomfortableness in the body,
Mm.
the restricted tissue, right? So it makes no sense to me to go target the muscle first, right? At first, I want to target your skin, your nervous system. Then I want to go down a little bit and then get to that fascial layer. See what's happening there. Once I've kind of loosened that up, then I can go down deeper into maybe the muscle tissues that
Mm.
are also being affected from that compression or that restriction that's happening.
And you can just do that in a specific area. So it doesn't have to be an overall.
No, no, I think, it's kind of a weird got to go back to taking. So I took a fascial course, and in that class, there was this big dude guy, right? Like you just looked at him, you thought, yeah, I call it throwing elbows. He throws some elbows, like he does a deep tissue massage, right? And for him to even get the concept of even how to assess it, right? Because it's if you feel like you're doing nothing, like you truly feel like you're doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
Because
As a receiver, I've been like, hey,
yeah,
what you doing?
but I'm feeling, where is this coming from? Is it local? Is it more down the line, like down
Mm.
fuse, they call it, like more coming from somewhere else, right? Because you can have a restriction in your shoulder, right? But maybe it's not coming from the shoulder.
Yeah.
Maybe it's from like lower down, right? So you kind of have to release all of that and then get to that area that you're kind of feeling that discomfort in. And I think that's, yeah, actually, we talk about you falling asleep, which I love, but I do ask questions. So I do come to areas and I'll be like, oh, like, do you feel that?
Hmm.
Sometimes you'll feel what I'm feeling, right? But
Hmm.
sometimes, you won't. But I'm still
Sometimes I feel you on
still
my
valid for
shoulder
me.
and it's in my wrist. Like
Yeah,
it's showing up in my
right.
wrist.
But it's all so connected and it's layer by layer by layer, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think this, this disconnect from our bodies has really affected uh, people's ability to know what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And what's causing the pain and why it's there, right?
Yeah.
After I treatment, I usually would say to somebody, like, kind of think about it for 24, 48 hours. How does my body feel? How am I moving? Am I better? Am I worse? Right?
Yeah.
Because it does kind of gear treatment. Do I
Yeah.
need to treat something? Do I need to change a movement? Do I need to, like, not move anything? Right? Like, it really, they used to say in school that it's like a puzzle that you have to put together. And that's very true. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Our
And then,
bodies are so smart and they're so also used to the patterns that we've given them. And so any change in a pattern, right? So to bring it back to the people that are listening to this podcast, like you talked about, if breast tissue has been removed or if there's been a big open surgery, like things have been changed. And
mhm,
so I often talk about like listening to the whispers of your body. Like when you have a little ache somewhere, okay, what does it feel like? What emotion is it bringing up? Because if it's bringing up like fear or something, you need to deal with that also. And then what can you do about it? And perhaps it's not something you can manage yourself. And so having tools in your toolbox, having someone that you can go to that can
Yeah.
help you to assess that. But you have to be, bringing it all the way back to that disconnect conversation, you have to be connected and
Mhm.
want to. And this is something else, that when it comes to scarring and post surgery or post treatment trauma, that first of all the body holds on to that trauma, but also the psychology of disconnect from the body because of that feeling like my body has failed me, or I have failed my body, or my how do I love a body that has been changed, when really there are people like yourself that are out there that can help
Mhm.
to rework and to bring back that awareness
Yeah.
and create that self love and intuitiveness of the body again.
And it's kindness with my hands, right? Like, I think that's the other part of it, right? Like, I want to move slowly with this, not just cancer patients. That's a part of it too, right? You got to move slowly. You got to move kindly, right?
Mhm.
They, the body's already been through enough, right?
Mhm.
So how am I going to help this person, right? Kind of move through the changes in their tissue. How do I help that? How do I, heal some of that trauma that's been stored within the body, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's conversation, boundaries, you know, especially boundaries, like really listening to what's happening with the person on my table. Like, how is this feeling? Where are you feeling it? Right? All of
Mhm.
these things done very mindfully, right? Which brings us back to, my yoga training, my mindfulness training in yoga, right? I think it's so important for me as a massage therapist that my client on that table knows that they're always in control of their treatment, right?
Mm.
Something they don't like, something they're uncomfortable with, something they're not ready for,
Right.
that those things are validated and listened to, right?
Yeah. But
And
that would
that
require the person to know how to use their voice, right? Which
true,
is a whole other conversation.
right? But I do think I have that conversation when you walk into my office as a new patient where I kind of tell you that, right? Here's your permission to lie down on my table and let it go, right? Uh, whether that be sleeping, right? You can talk to me. I will talk to you if you want to have a conversation, but this will be led by you at all times, right?
Mm.
This, either whether we have a conversation will be led by you, whether you fall asleep on my table will be led by you, right? It's that piece of like control that needs to come back to the client, right?
Oh, that's a whole other conversation.
So important, especially when we look at the aspects of cancer, right?
Yeah.
My husband's gone through a journey as well, right? And
Yes.
there is this like, and I think that's, again, I go back to everything happens for a reason. And in this case, like, I think that has helped me look at cancer differently in a way of like, I obviously I love you, right? And I know that you've been through a lot and all that stuff, but it's different when it's like so close to
Yeah.
you. Right?
Yeah.
And you don't, I saw you, right? I saw you, I heard you, all of those things, but it's
Mm.
different when you're walking into that cancer clinic. It's a
Yeah.
completely different ball game. And then you're like, oh, wait, right? It's not the cancer. It's all the waiting and
Yeah.
all the stress that's building up in your body.
Yes.
It's the treatment train, like we've talked about the physiology part of like the treatment changes your cells, changes you from the inside out, right? But just the aspect of like the diagnosis, the imaging, right? All of the little pieces of the
Yeah.
puzzle that the people don't see in the background that's happening, the stress building up in your body, even
Yeah.
caregivers, right? I would say, even from a caregiver aspect, it was never the cancer or what we were going to do about it. It's this waiting and waiting and hoping and praying and what's going to happen. And your brain just, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All the tension building in the body, not just for the person that's been diagnosed, but the family members that are going along for the ride, whether they like it or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when somebody comes into my room and they talk about my mom has cancer, or my mom died of cancer, or my husband has cancer, or I have cancer, I have this conversation of like almost that comes from experience, right? And it's the empathy of like, how am I going to treat this person as an individual, knowing what they've gone through?
Hmm.
Every cancer story is different,
Yes.
but ultimately it's the same too. Like it's the same
Yes.
process that you go through for this diagnostic, right?
Yes.
Very mechanical. As
Hmm.
I found, anyways, it's very mechanical, right?
Yes.
And you just find yourself like, okay, what?
Yeah.
Right? Like it was interesting to see it from the inside,
Hmm.
and I think that experience also makes me look at other diagnoses differently as well, right? Because
Hmm.
maybe it's not cancer, maybe it's ulcerative colitis. It has an impact on how a person feels in their own body, how their mental wellness is progressing or not progressing, right? Because some
Yes.
people do what I did and be like, okay, like how do we fix this? And some people are like, I'm just going to dig my head in the sand and this isn't happening at all to me, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
It's all
Yeah.
going to be the medical field that's going to fix me and put me back together. I don't have to do the work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are two different people that walk into my space and I have to figure out, who are you? Are you going to do some work, or are you going to be like, I don't want to do anything?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
even want to talk about this. I don't want to, this isn't happening. Right.
And the misunderstanding out there that it is truly just a medical process.
Yeah.
Like I really try to address that over and over in, all of the platforms that I'm working in, because it's like, this is a medical thing happening in your body. First of
Yeah.
all, you are not your cancer.
Right.
There's a diagnosis of something happening in your body or whatever the illness is, but medicine has a part in it, and this is really such a big part of why I want to have you here today, because of your professional story, but also your personal story, to understand that there can be an integration, and it is a psychological sport. It
Mhm.
is like, they talk about sports psychology and visualization, and runners at the start line, like they're visualizing the entire race before they even do it. But well, some of us that are coaches, we do that, but the regular person doesn't get necessarily that. Okay, let's visualize it. Let's talk about it. Let's go through how fascia release is going to help you, how changing what you eat is going to help you, how literally visualizing. One of the best experiences we had, weird, going through the cancer process, was watching videos before we even went to the cancer clinic for the first
Yeah.
time. The LHSC in London had a video series that said, this is where you're going to park your car. This is the door you're going to walk through. This is what you're going to see when you walk through the door. You're going to go around that corner. Like, visualization is so huge.
Yeah.
It's such an important part of the process. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
addressing the medical
I didn't
stuff.
have
And
that.
no, it
Remember,
needs
I
to
had that
happen.
conversation with you. I'm like, what the hell is happening here?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
It's
what is happening?
overwhelming.
It was so overwhelming. And people don't understand until you walk into that building. And listen, I must say, they are amazing. The
They
staff are
are.
amazing there.
They are.
Everybody's, upbeat, talking to you, showing you
Yes.
around, but in your brain, you're just like, what is happening here?
How did I get here? How am I even here?
I don't want to be here. I don't care where the Tim Hortons is. I don't want your pamphlets. I don't want to stay. I don't
Yeah.
want to be here. Right. So there's this whole psychology that's happening in your brain where like, oh, this is welcoming, comfy, cozy. Oh, they're holding my hand. But wait, I don't want any of this.
And your
Right.
brain is in fight or flight.
Yeah, you're running. You're like, I don't want to be here. Right.
Yeah.
It's such, and I remember having that conversation with you about like, oh, there's once was a video, and I'm like, they need to put that video back up.
They do need to put that video back up, because it really it
Yeah,
didn't make it easier, but it made it a little bit easier to say like, okay, I know exactly what the process is going to look
yeah,
like. It didn't
yeah.
reduce the stress. It
No,
didn't, you know, but at least
no,
it allowed us something.
yeah. I just feel like for me, it would have been like, this is what you're going to see, right? Don't be shocked by what
Yeah.
you like. And it's not like it was like a scary shock or anything. There's people getting their treatment and, it's just, I think I was just kind of shocked by the whole presentation in general.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, it's like my brain didn't know what to make
Yes.
of it
Yes. And
at
then
all.
that's
I
the
just
ripple
didn't know.
effect through the body.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then that's, the tension, right? Of like, oh, this is weird, right?
Yeah.
I just feel like, yeah, that whole experience gave me a whole new appreciation of like how I view just anybody that's
Yes.
walking through life because we're all
Yes.
walking through different various challenges, right? Cancer just happens to be really stress inducing, right?
Yeah. A
So
little
for
bit.
caregivers, for the person that's going through it. And
Yeah.
I think too, like I just told you, there's two schools of people and maybe some in between, right? Some
Yeah.
that want to learn and want to do the work, right? And they're in it. Then you've
Yeah.
got the halfway point where like, well, maybe I'll do some work, but I'm not sure what I'm doing. I don't, if this is not, it's overwhelming, right? I'm just
Yes.
overwhelmed. And
Yes.
then there's like the other half that is like, again, buried my head in the sand. This isn't happening. This isn't doing anything to me, right? But it is, right? So no matter if you're looking at caregiver or person that's, going through it, has the diagnosis of something like cancer, ulcerative colitis, any disease really, how are they processing that?
Hmm.
And then what is it doing internally? How
Hmm.
are they holding that trauma in their cells, right? Because
Yeah.
it's changing them from the inside out. It's
Yeah.
changing their fascia. It's changing how they're holding their body, right? It's so interconnected, the body and the brain and the gut. Like it just
Yeah.
the physiology is like so cool.
I think that's a really powerful message that, you know, that having the self-awareness and asking for help is a superpower. I'm going to offer too that for the listeners, if your hospital or your medical team asks you for feedback, I'm telling you that visualization video is game changing. Ask them to make a video. Ask them to have that available on your patient platform for you to watch so that you can at least mentally prepare yourself. Because as Jennifer said, like everything is cumulative. It starts to accumulate in your body. And if you can take control, because cancer takes a lot of control away, but there are things you can, if you can control little pieces like that, then going through the process, you may not end up like this tight ball of fiber. You may be able to sort of find some release, introspection. And I appreciate also that you brought up the caregiver because the caregivers really are the unsung heroes and they walk the walk with the patient. And
Yeah.
so it's important that they also get care and take care of their bodies because they're not doing the surgery treatment stuff, but they're doing the keeping the kids going, getting to work, getting the groceries, doing all the other things that just the day to day. And that takes a toll on them also. I know that there are people who listen to the podcast that are caregivers. And so I think it's important that the message be for them as well.
Yeah. And I think, we talk about that, the scar tissue is one aspect of it that I do think surgeons in general, whether it be for cancer surgery or for just taking care of scar tissue, should be saying, go get this treatment done, right?
Yes.
Go get this massage therapy treatment that will help, lay those tissues better in a better pattern so that you don't end up like, again, it's kind of stopping what could lead to restrictions in the body before it even starts, right?
Right.
So, but then if we look at from the cancer aspect, I think that's too something that should be mentioned by the
Mm.
oncologist.
Hmm.
How about going to seek massage out to calm your nervous system? This is a high stress thing that's just happened. And, you know, we've talked about Paul's cancer quite a bit. You know, my husband had lymphatic cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, follicular, right?
Mhm.
So not a cancer that you're gonna, you know, really uh have like a lifespan shortage on, right? Like it's very treatable, um, but it's still cancer.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's why I talk, with my clients, like the prognosis can throw you off to begin with, but every cancer story is different. Every cancer is different. Even people with the same diagnosis go through that cancer differently, and so it's there are varying degrees of the cancer. I don't want to make it sound, lighthearted, but the truth is that, like you said, as soon as that word is dropped on the table, everything changes, and
Matter.
and it doesn't matter what is happening. It doesn't
It
matter. There's no comparing. Maybe that's the message. It's not about comparing,
Yeah,
the intensity of the diagnosis.
I
It's the
think,
fact that it's the caring for the person.
yeah, and it just causes uncertainty, right?
Yes.
Uncertainty of what is this going to look now in the moment, in
Yes.
months, and further down the line, right? So it's like, you know, it's just an interesting kind of concept of like, how do we help people that are going through these big diagnoses, right?
Yeah.
How do we help their nervous system regulate, right? And I think what I like to offer people is my kind hands, right? Like I tell people, you know, this is how I treat. This is how I choose to treat. I like to work with fascia. I like, I do go deep. However, I take my time. I
Yeah.
do it very
Yeah.
slow. You felt it. It's very slow. It's very quiet, but it's also very mindful
And
because
very
I
nurturing.
to be mindful of who do I have on my table today,
Yeah.
right? Who am I working with today? And what do they need from my hands? And where do I need to be? Right.
Yeah.
I try to teach people that it doesn't always have to cause you pain to be making a difference. And
Right.
I think if anything that can be taken away is that there's that disconnect from the body of like, I've got to feel this pain or something
When I'm actually seeking relief.
when I'm actually looking for something else, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm actually looking for these restrictions to be, you know, removed from my body, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen in one session. Sometimes, if I'm working on something, like we've done several sessions for you and your shoulder, it doesn't happen overnight, right? It takes
Hmm.
takes time. It takes time for those fibers to lay in that area. It's going to take time to remove them or make them lay in a different way, right? It
Yeah.
takes time. And sometimes it takes other healthcare providers like chiropractors, osteopath coming in to help me,
That's the
right?
holistic wraparound that
Right. It's
can
like a
happen.
circle, the whole circle of care, right? And
Yeah.
I really feel massage therapists are sometimes overlooked for that circle of care. And I'm
Mhm.
not understanding quite why. Because we're very valid, right? Like we're very
Yeah.
valid in the work we do. Um, and often in the approach we have, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of us that like to treat the same way, right? Like
Yeah.
I just yesterday I had someone say, "Oh, I like massage therapy, but it's too much. Like I just like it light." But I've gone to several and they don't do that, right?
Mm. But you have to find your person, don't you? Like,
I'm not going to be for everyone. Like I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's fine. Like you're either going to find benefit from it or you're not, right?
yeah.
And I don't want you with me if you haven't found benefit from me. I would rather you find somebody else that is more suited for how you feel your body is responding.
Yeah. That leads me to the question of um, someone who has cancer and is looking for a massage therapist. they might think that they need to find a massage therapist who is specifically trained in massage for cancer?
I mean, I don't think so. I think we all get our extra education, if you will, right? So
Hmm.
me, I've done extra education in fascial. You heard me talk about this DNM, which is dermal neuromodulation, which is working with your cutaneous nerves specifically. I plan to do cranial sacral therapy coming up. You know, I think it doesn't have to be specific, but they do need to know a little bit extra, right? You know, when we go through massage therapy school, we get a broad kind of learning of everything, right?
Hmm.
Of fascia, of muscles, of bones, joints, ligaments, tendons, all of that. We get a broad spectrum of like conditions. So we all learn how to treat people with cancer.
Hmm.
However, I do think it's always a good idea to have somebody that maybe understands a little bit more in depth about what it's doing to your tissues. How does chemotherapy hold into your body? How is it changing your cells? How is it changing your tissues? Is it short term? Is it long term? Are you 10
Hmm.
years out of like cancer and you're done? You've been in remission for a number of years, but how is, you know what I mean? I think it's important that the person that's treating you understand the deeper aspects of cancer.
Yeah, and I think that's where the patient needs to advocate for themselves and say like, and I know there's always a form like, this is who I am, this is what I've had. When they ask me to list, have you had any surgeries? I'm like, ooh, here we go. I list them all so that the practitioner, the massage therapist, can understand. I do have one question, and I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but there is specialized massage therapy for lymphatic drain. Like a lot of breast cancer patients have lymphedema, they run into issues with drainage.
It's hard to find someone with, I know there's a lady in London that has specific training for lymphatic drainage. I would tell you we all work with your lymphatic system. So I think really it's a conversation with the massage therapist that you're working with about their knowledge around cancer, about their knowledge around the lymphatics draining.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, I personally, as a massage therapist, would likely refer out for lymphatic stuff. Um, it also, by the way, is a very delicate treatment.
Hmm.
It's it's very superficial. It's not deep, deep. Often I don't know why, but people think it's like it has to be a deep,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's not. But there is people that they've taken that extra certification for lymphatic drainage specifically, and I would likely refer out for that. Yeah.
And that's fair. You know what? I respect that because there are people who are going to want a very particular person. And again, I would hope, and I know you've done it for me, is when I've said, this is what I'm experiencing. You said, well, I'm going to need to do some research on that, and that the therapist themselves is willing to do a little bit of looking into things.
And I would tell you, like lymphatic stuff, although I learned it obviously in school, it's not something that I've taken a deep dive on,
Yeah.
right? I've gone more towards fascia, scar tissue, like cranial sacral therapy, and the
Yeah.
DN stuff is
Yeah.
where I kind of have found my interest. That's not to say that lymphatics isn't super interesting because it is. I just haven't gotten to that kind of
Yeah.
stage where I'm ready to kind of look into
There's
that.
a lot.
Often the certification is quite expensive as well.
Hmm.
So it's a big training. So there is somebody in London that does it. Um, yeah, and I think it depends on what kind of lymphatic drainage we're about.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how I will answer that question.
Yeah, so people can
Yeah,
ask questions, look and see, and really just have conversations with their therapist to see if they're the best fit.
and I'm going to go back to people just don't know, right? People
Yeah.
don't know that them having cancer 10 years ago matters to me.
Mm.
And they often are kind of, well, why does that matter, right? Why does that matter? That was 10 years ago. I'm in remission. I've been in remission for 10 years. Well, because you've had these, depending on what type of treatment you have, I want to know, you know, what it's doing, what it's done
Yeah.
over the years in your body. And I think that's kind of missing too, right? Is this knowledge of like it's changing us from the inside out,
Yeah.
whether we have
Yeah.
chemo or whether we have radiation. And then how is that cancer treatment? How has it been delivered? Is it a pill? Is it a pump? Is it like, my husband had 12 radiation sessions just on the side of his head. That
Yeah.
was it,
Yeah.
right? But the tissue's then been changed in that area, right? And I think that's, probably something that I've gotten really interested into is like, how is this changing, right? How has this
Mm.
pathologically been changed in the body and why, right? I love whys. So,
We
and
could
why?
talk about this forever. This is
Yeah,
like
and
there's
why?
just so many. It's like the fascia. There's just so many layers to this
Yeah.
of the
And
care. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that people should speak to their healthcare team about massage as a possibility and advocate for themselves in getting that treatment if it's available to them. I know
ask,
that for some people financially it might not be available to them, so seek in your community, are there resources available to support getting massage therapy? Um, can you go to a place where they offer it at a discount or even for free for people with cancer? Because it is so imperative in the body. Build a relationship with your massage therapist so that you have the comfort to fall asleep on the table, to ask questions.
and I think that is what's missing in the healthcare field
Mm.
too, not just with doctors, right? Don't be afraid to ask me a question. Like,
Yeah,
why are you doing what you're doing?
yeah,
Why are you asking me that question? Why is that applicable? Right. And I think, and they teach us in massage therapy school, and it's a very prominent with the CMTO, right? Your client has to know that they're in charge of their healthcare, right?
yes.
They have the right to ask questions, and as many questions as they feel that needs to be asked, right? And I think you should know who's providing you your treatment.
Hmm.
How do they know what they know? Uh, what are their interests when it comes to, are they a sports massage therapist, right? Because if you're like having a sports injury, like I treat it, I can treat it, but it's not like my favorite
Yeah,
wheelhouse to
yeah,
be involved with, right? So if you're coming to see me and you have some sort of sport injury, I'm probably going to refer you somewhere else, right? Because
yeah.
that's not what I personally love to do,
It's
right?
really about finding alignment.
It's
And
finding like who is the right person for this job? Who is the right practitioner? Does this person align with my values? Are they listening to me, right?
yeah,
Are they hearing what I'm saying? Are they asking me questions, more questions about my health? It's not about just coming into my office, plopping on my table face down, let's get started, right? Like there's some conversation that needs to happen in order, I feel, in order for me to give you the best treatment that I can give you, right? Like I want to know how the last treatment was. I want to know a lot of different things that
yeah,
actually come into play and have an impact on the treatment that I'm giving you. And I
yeah,
think you have to advocate for yourself.
yes,
You have to own it, right? This
yes.
is this
And
is
that's your care, right? And that's part of the care.
yeah,
That this is a level of care that is very personal and intimate in its own way. And so it's finding a practitioner that works with you and for you.
this
And I always say, like, again, people feel like they lose so much control with a cancer diagnosis, but there are many things that you can control. And finding the right person and taking control of the practice is one of those things.
yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. We've had like such a huge conversation. I love this so much. I love being able to bring in a variety of people that can share so that this community of people listening to the podcast can grow and learn personally. And I know that they will have some takeaways from this whole conversation that, again, we could talk for hours and hours about all these things because we're on the same level of passion about these types of things because we care about people. And ultimately, it is a human experience, and other humans supporting that experience it's part of it. So I have one more question for you before we wrap up our time together. And the question is, what does living to thrive mean to you?
I'm going to go with balance, right? Like, I feel like finding balance in life, right? Finding the balance of what is too much fitness, what is enough fitness, what is
Mm,
enough good food in my diet, right? Because I think, even as a wellness coach at the St. Thomas Hospital, I'm often saying to people, don't strive for perfection, right? Strive for getting it right most of the time, right?
yes.
In there lies the balance, right? So I think learning to thrive, learning to find a balance of like, this is okay. This feels balanced, even though it wasn't like perfect, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
There's still this balance, right? I'm still in balance, right? So I feel like that's learning to thrive or living to thrive for me,
Yeah.
right? Being balance in all things.
Beautiful. I love that because it really is, it's a balancing act, and it's about finding balance, and it's about really like being able to breathe into it, be mindful. There's so many aspects to it, and the balance can come from having a good support team, getting the help that you need, learning how to breathe, all of the good things.
All of the good things.
All of the good things. You are one of the good things, Jennifer. One of the beautiful things in my life. So thank you very much. I know you are local to St. Thomas, Ontario, Canada. So there are people that listen to the podcast that are from our area. So maybe you would like to tell them where they can find you or other.
So I work out of Simply Massage, and I work with 5 other beautiful massage therapists that are amazing. And we do yoga at our studio as well. So they can find my coworkers and anything yoga at Simply Massage. Yeah, their
Beautiful.
web.
Okay. And I will put that in the show notes for the people that are in the area. So oh my goodness. Well, Jennifer, a big thank you to you for being here today and for sharing your wisdom and your insights on how hands-on healing through massage can make such a huge difference in a person's life. So I just want to again, like, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being one of my people in my life that is supporting me and for sharing everything that you've brought to the conversation today.
So much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Wonderful,
Thank you.
wonderful. And I will see you around. I know that I will. So again, a big thanks to Jennifer for being here. And just before we end this episode, I just want to share with you, the listeners, that I have created a new one-to-one coaching program called Thrive. And it's a 12-week personalized coaching program with support through video lessons, PDFs for you to print, audios of meditations, and 12 one-to-one online coaching sessions with me. So wherever you are living in the world, we can still connect. I'm currently looking for 3 individuals who are committed to learning, growing, making changes, and supporting their body, mind, and spirit. This program is also open to caregivers, as we discussed with Jennifer, the impact that this has on the caregivers and how important it is for them to get support. So if you are a caregiver, you are welcome to come to the program as well. So you can just go ahead and head to the show notes. There's a link in there to book a free 30-minute call with me to talk about the Thrive coaching program and whether that is a good fit for you or not. Also, just I dropped it a couple of times in our podcast, but my book, Living to Thrive, A Holistic Guide to Living with Cancer, is available for you to purchase and to enjoy. And I think by the time this podcast airs, the Audible version of it will be available to those of you that enjoy Audible books. And you can find that on Amazon or on my website. And again, I'll link that in the show notes. And friends, if you have enjoyed this episode or any other episodes that you've listened to, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening. Your reviews help to make the podcast more visible to other people who are looking for support and who need support. And so if you could just go ahead and do that to spread the news that there is a way to live with cancer and that you can thrive with cancer. Thank you for joining me and for joining our guest Jennifer on this episode of the Living to Thrive with Cancer podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And may you live your life to your fullest, follow your heart, and thrive in all your